The night my own husband tried to burn me and our little boy alive, the airport smelled like stale coffee and tired dreams. I remember that smell more than anything. It mixed with the sharp brightness of those fluorescent lights and the ache behind my eyes. I was bone-deep tired. That kind of tired that doesn't live in your body, but in your spirit. I stood there in Hartsfield-Jackson, clutching my purse and my 6-year-old son's little hand, watching my husband, Kwesi, straighten his perfect gray suit. His tie was crisp, his shoes polished, his cologne the same expensive one I'd saved up to buy him last birthday. To anyone looking, we were a picture. The successful black executive, the supportive wife, the quiet, smart little boy. If you had seen us, you might have smiled and thought, now that's a beautiful family. But let me tell you something, baby. Pictures don't show the cracks. Kwesi leaned down, gave me that public smile he was so good at, and pulled me into a hug that felt more like a pose than an embrace. He said, "Chicago this time, Ayla. 3 days, big deal. You got the house, okay? Hold it down for me." Hold it down. Like my whole life was just keeping everything together while he traveled and shined. I smiled like I'd trained myself to smile. We'll be fine. My son, Malik, didn't smile. His small fingers were digging into my palm. His hand was damp with sweat. He stared at his father the way children stare at something they can't quite name, but know they should fear. I should have noticed. Kwesi crouched in front of him and placed those big hands on Malik's shoulders. "Take care of Mama for me, little man." Malik didn't say a word, just nodded, eyes too wide, too still. Kwesi kissed Malik's forehead, then mine. "Love you both. See you soon." We watched him walk toward TSA, that rolling suitcase in his hand, that confident stride. People rushed around us, goodbyes, reunions, boarding calls. Somewhere, a baby cried. An announcement crackled overhead, and my son's hand trembled in mine. When Kwesi disappeared into the security line, I let out a long breath. "Come on, baby, let's go home," I said, already thinking about the heels I'd kick off, the hot bath I'd run, the quiet I would force myself to ignore. We were almost at the automatic glass doors when Malik stopped. Stopped so suddenly, I almost dragged him. I turned. "Malik? What's wrong, sweetheart?" He looked up at me, and I have never in my life seen terror like that on a child's face. His lower lip shook. His eyes were shining with tears he was too scared to let fall. "Mama, please don't take me home." I froze. My heart did a strange, crooked turn in my chest. "What are you talking about, baby? Of course we're going home. It's late." He yanked my hand, desperate now. His voice louder. "Mama, please, we can't go back there. I heard Daddy this morning. He was on the phone. He said something bad was going to happen tonight at the house. He said he needed to be far away when it happened. He said we wouldn't be a problem anymore." The world around me blurred. The doors kept sliding open and shut like the airport itself was breathing. And right there, under those harsh lights and blinking departure boards, I had to decide. Do I treat this like a child's wild imagination, or do I believe my baby? I took one shaky breath, then another. "Malik," I whispered. "Tell Mama everything you heard." I didn't know it then, but the choice I made in the next few seconds would decide whether we lived or died. And my dear, that was only the beginning. You know what hurts the most as a mother? Not the pain of childbirth, not the sleepless nights. It's remembering all the times your child tried to tell you something and you brushed it aside. As Malik clung to me near those sliding doors, his little chest heaving, I remembered every warning I had waved away like a fly. Mama, there's a car parked outside again. Mama, Daddy was whispering in his office. Mama, Daddy said he's tired of us always being around. And every time I had smiled and told him, "Don't worry, baby, grown-up stuff. Daddy's just stressed." I thought I was protecting him, but really, I was protecting the image I wanted to believe. Right there, I decided I would not make that mistake again. I crouched down so we were eye to eye. My knees cracked the way they always did, reminding me I wasn't as young as I once was. I held his small arms gently. "Okay, Malik," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Tell Mama everything from the start. Don't leave a single thing out." His eyes darted around. People were streaming past us, rolling suitcases, hugging, laughing, living their own stories. No one knew mine was falling apart. "This morning," he whispered, leaning closer, "I woke up early. I went to get water. Daddy's office door was a little open. I heard him on the phone." He swallowed hard. I could feel his breath shaking against my cheek. He said, "Tonight, when they're asleep, make sure it looks like an accident." He said he needed to be on a flight so nobody would suspect. He said, "They've served their purpose." I felt something icy creep up my spine. "Are you sure, baby?" I asked, though my gut already knew. He nodded urgently. His voice sounded different, Mama, not like Daddy, like a stranger inside him. For a moment, I wanted to laugh it off, to say, "You misunderstood. Daddy would never." But then, my mind started lining things up, one by one, like a cruel little slideshow. Kwesi pushing me to put the house in his name. Estate planning, babe, just smart. Kwesi insisting on raising my life insurance. Generational wealth, we're building a legacy. Kwesi shutting his office door for more and more calls. Clients, Ayla, you wouldn't understand. The new passwords on accounts that used to be joint. The way he flinched whenever I walked in unexpectedly. All those tiny red flags I smoothed out because I wanted to believe in the man I married. I looked at Malik. His tears were sliding down now, leaving wet tracks on his brown cheeks. He wiped them with the back of his hand like he'd seen grown men do. "I believe you," I said quietly. The relief that flashed across his face almost broke me. It was like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "Okay," I said, standing back up slowly, my bones protesting. "We're not going home. Not yet." "Where are we going?" he asked, voice small. "We're going to check, from a distance. We're going to watch, and if your daddy meant what I think he meant..." My throat tightened. I squeezed his hand. "Then, baby, we're going to need to be very, very smart." I led him through the parking deck, the echo of our footsteps bouncing off the concrete. The night air hit my face, cool, thin, almost metallic with city smells. My hands were trembling so bad, I fumbled the keys twice before opening our SUV. Malik climbed into the back, clutching his dinosaur backpack like a shield. "Will you still believe me if nothing happens?" he whispered. I looked at him through the rearview mirror. His eyes searched mine, begging for an answer that would anchor him. "I'll believe you," I said, turning the ignition. "But I'll tell you the truth, baby." As I pulled out of that airport, my heart praying I was just being dramatic, I had no idea what was waiting for us on that quiet Buckhead street. And what we saw next stripped away any last illusion I had about the man I married. We didn't drive straight to our street. Some instinct, old, quiet, woman's intuition, told me not to. Instead, I circled around the neighborhood, my palms slick on the steering wheel, my pulse drumming in my ears. Streetlights flickered in that orange way. throwing long shadows over neat lawns and trimmed hedges. From the back seat, Malik watched everything, his breath fogging the window. I found a side street that ran behind our block, a place where the oaks grew taller and thicker, where the houses peeked between the leaves like secrets. From there, if I turned the headlights off, I could just make out our home, our proud two-story brick house with the black shutters and white trim, the one I'd painted myself, humming gospel under my breath one summer. I eased the car into the darkest patch between two trees and switched the engine off. The silence that followed roared louder than any noise. Our house sat there, lit only by the soft yellow porch light Kwesi had insisted on installing. The lawn looked peaceful. The curtains were drawn neat. You'd never know danger was supposed to be breathing inside those walls. "We're just watching," I told Malik. "We're not going near it. Not tonight." He nodded and leaned forward between the seats, eyes glued to the shape of our home. Minutes stretched. 10, 15. The dashboard clock glowed a calm, uncaring green. My shoulders ached from tension. I kept asking myself, what if I misunderstood? What if Malik misheard? What if I'm about to turn my whole life upside down over nothing? Then another voice answered just as quickly. And what if you're right? You see, that's the thing with intuition. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and you have to be brave enough to listen. "Mama," Malik breathed, his voice barely more than a thread. "Look." Headlights turned slowly onto our street. Not the sharp, quick kind of a neighbor coming home. This was slower, deliberate. A dark van. No logos, no front plate. Windows tinted so black they looked like eyes with no soul. It glided past one house, then another. My house came into view, neat and framed by those rose bushes I planted when Malik was born. The van stopped right in front of it. My mouth went dry. Two men got out, dark clothes, hoods up. They did not walk like neighbors. They moved like shadows that had learned to walk. For a second, I lied to myself. Maybe they're repairmen. Maybe security. Maybe... Then one of them reached into his pocket. I thought he'd pull out tools, something to break in. He lifted his hand, and moonlight hit metal. A key. My key. I heard Malik's breath hitch. "Mama, how do they—" I didn't have an answer. My stomach turned to stone. One man slipped the key into the lock. No forcing, no struggle. He opened the front door of my home as casually as if he'd lived there. And right there, in that parked car, on that dark street, it hit me like a slap. Only 3 people had keys. Me, Kwesi, and the spare he kept locked in his office drawer. Baby, let me tell you, nothing feels worse than realizing the danger in your life has your address memorized and a key in its palm. We watched their flashlights dance through the curtains, up, down, moving room to room. They weren't stealing jewelry. They weren't taking TVs. They were preparing. At first, I thought I smelled it only in my mind. Then the air in the car changed. Malik wrinkled his nose. "What's that smell?" he whispered. It came in waves, a sharp chemical odor, heavy and oily, like gasoline. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then, softly at first, we saw it. A thin gray ribbon slipping out from under the living room window. Then another from the kitchen. Smoke curling into the night like it had all the time in the world. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. "Oh, God," I breathed. "Oh, God." Because there it was. The truth lit up right in front of me. If we had gone home, like I always did, we would have been in our pajamas, teeth brushed, doors locked, fast asleep upstairs, while 2 strangers used my husband's key to turn my house into a coffin. And my love, the worst part hadn't even happened yet.
because in the middle of all that smoke and flame, my phone lit up with a message from the very man who set it all in motion.
The fire grew fast. One moment, it was just smoke slipping quietly from the windows. The next, flames were licking the curtains, turning the soft glow in the living room into a hungry orange mouth. Glass cracked, then shattered. The heat pulsed across the street, even where we were hidden. Somewhere, an alarm shrieked to life. Lights blinked on in nearby houses. Shadows moved at windows. I sat there, paralyzed, nails digging into my palms. The home where Malik took his first steps, where I'd burned my first Thanksgiving turkey, where my mama's quilt hung on the back of our couch, that home was being devoured. "Mama," Malik sobbed softly, pressing his forehead against the seat. "Our house." I wanted to run to it. I wanted to bang on the doors, scream at the neighbors, throw water at the flames. But I also knew, if we'd been inside, we'd already be gone. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer. The dark van pulled away before the first engine turned onto the street, slipping into the night like sin trying to hide. I was still staring, still watching my life burn, when my phone buzzed in my lap. The vibration startled me. I fumbled for it with shaking fingers. A text from Kwesi. "Just landed. How are my two favorite people? Hope you're home safe and sleeping. Love you guys." I read it once, twice, 3 times. Each word felt like glass in my chest. He knew we were supposed to be home. He expected us to be swallowed up in flames while he walked through some airport pretending to be a hardworking businessman. Love you guys. I bent forward and threw up. Right there, in the car, with my son's small hand on my back. All the lies, all the mornings making him breakfast, all the nights believing I was loved, they came up with that bitter taste. "Mama," Malik sobbed softly, scared. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, breathing hard. "I'm okay," I managed. "I'm okay, baby." But I wasn't. Something inside me had cracked clean down the middle. I'd always told myself, he may be distant, he may be proud, but he'd never hurt us. Now I was staring at the proof. He had paid someone to do what his own hands wouldn't dare. The firefighters were battling the flames now, shouting to each other, hoses roaring. Neighbors stood on lawns in robes and slippers, hands over their mouths. Every now and then someone would look around and ask, "Where's Ayla? Where's Malik?" I sank down in my seat, not ready to answer. Not ready to face a world where I was the wife of the man who lit the match. "What are we gonna do?" Malik whispered. Good question. We had no house, no clothes but what we were wearing, no proof yet that Kwesi was behind this, except the word of a little boy and a mother's broken heart. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and closed my eyes. Somewhere in the back of my mind, like a lantern flickering in a storm, a memory surfaced. My father's voice. Raspy from chemo. Gentle but firm. "Ayla," he said one day from his hospital bed, reaching for my hand. "I don't trust that man of yours. If you ever land in trouble and nobody believes you, call this woman. Don't argue with me, just do it." He'd pressed a card into my palm. I'd tucked it into my wallet, offended, thinking, Daddy is just being overprotective. Now, sitting in a dark SUV, watching smoke rise where my home used to be, I reached for that same wallet with trembling fingers. The card was still there, edges worn, ink slightly faded. Number, small note in Daddy's shaky handwriting. "If you ever feel alone, call."
Hello? The voice on the other end was low and rough, like someone who had seen too many late nights and too much truth. This is Ayla Vance," I stammered. "My father was Samuel Lang. He gave me your card before he passed. He said if I was ever in real trouble—" There was a pause.
I heard the rustle of papers, the faint hum of a TV in the background. Then that same voice softened, just a little. "Samuel's girl," she said. "He told me you might call one day. Where are you?" I swallowed. "I'm in my car, near what used to be my house. It's burning." My voice broke on the last word. "My son is with me. I think my husband did this." Another pause. No shocked gasp, no quick denial. "Can you drive?" she asked. "Yes. Get somewhere safe first," she said. "I'm texting you an address. Don't go to family. Don't go to friends. Don't answer your husband's calls. Come straight to me." The address pinged through a moment later, an old brick building downtown in the Sweet Auburn district. I put the car in drive with hands that still weren't steady. Malik curled up in the back seat, eyes red but quiet now, like he'd run out of tears. The city blurred around us, streetlights, traffic, shadows moving behind glass. When I pulled up outside the building, it didn't look like much. Faded sign, simple door, a narrow staircase visible through the glass. I carried Malik up those stairs, one slow step at a time. His weight pressed into my hip, but I didn't mind. Feeling his warmth reminded me what I was fighting for. Before I could knock, the door opened. She stood there in a worn sweater and jeans, silver hair braided back tight, dark eyes that saw too much. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't loud, but the room changed when she spoke. "You must be Ayla," she said. "I'm Auntie Z. Come in, baby." The office smelled like coffee, paper, and old wood. Files stacked on every surface. Law books lined the walls, some so used the spines were peeling. "Lay that boy on the couch," she directed. "There's a blanket right there." I tucked Malik in. He fell asleep almost instantly, worn out from fear and smoke and two big truths for such a small heart. "Sit," she said, pushing a mug of coffee into my hand. "Now, breathe, then tell me everything, from the moment you dropped your husband at that airport." And so I did. I talked until my throat hurt, about the airport hug that wasn't a hug, about Malik's whisper, about the van, the key, the fire, the text. I cried and wiped my face with the back of my hand like a child. She never interrupted, never rushed me, just watched, elbows on the desk, fingers pressed together under her chin. When I finished, the room was quiet except for the sound of Malik's soft breathing and the ticking of an old clock on the wall. "Ayla," she said finally, "your daddy was a good man. He came to me 3 years ago worried about you. He hired a private investigator through my office." I blinked. "A private? For who?" "For Quessy," she said simply. She stood, walked to a locked cabinet, and brought out a thick folder, edges worn like it had been opened and closed many times. She laid it gently on the desk between us and looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "Before you panic, remember this. Your father didn't want to hurt you. He wanted to protect you from a truth he was afraid you'd refuse to see." My hands shook as I opened the folder. Bank statements, photographs, reports, names I didn't recognize. And then, slowly, the life I thought I had began to fall apart line by line, because in those pages, I met a version of my husband I'd never seen before.
Inside that folder was a whole other marriage I hadn't known I was part of. While I had been clipping coupons, stretching grocery money, and trusting Quessy's big investments, he'd been gambling hard. Not the friendly poker night with the boys kind. No, baby. Underground casinos, private rooms with no windows. Men who don't send polite emails when you're late on a payment. Pages and pages showed transfers from our accounts to people I had never met. Interest so high, it looked like a bad joke. Photographs of him walking into shady buildings I'd never seen.
He owes, Auntie Z said softly, tapping a page with her finger. A lot. Close to 500,000 by now. Your mama's inheritance? Gone. I sat back, the room tilting just a little. My mama had left me that money with a kiss on my forehead and a whispered, "Make sure you always have something of your own, baby." I had put it into a joint account, proud and naive. What's mine is ours, I'd told myself, smiling. What about our house? I asked, my voice small. She turned a few pages. He put it up as collateral on some debts. Did you know that? I shook my head. My chest felt tight. I had been living inside a promise. Meanwhile, the deed to that promise had been passed around back rooms full of cigar smoke and whispered threats. And then there's this, she said, pulling out another document. Your life insurance policy. $2.5 million. Who's the beneficiary? Kwesi. My father insisted I get a big policy when I married, just in case, he said. I thought he was being dramatic. Sometimes, she said quietly, old folks see storms on the horizon before the clouds show. She slid something else toward me. A photocopy of a handwritten note. Need a clean accident. Must look natural. Fire's best. I'll be out of town. Payment $50,000. A.V. House. I stared at the initials. A.V. Ayla Vance. My vision blurred. So, all this, I whispered. The insurance, the travel, the anger whenever I talked about going back to work? She nodded. To him, you became numbers on a sheet, a solution to a problem. I felt sick, not because of what he'd planned, but because, deep down, some part of me had known for a long time that his love was conditional, fragile, built on what I could offer, not who I was. What do we do now? I asked, my voice barely there. We have this. But it's all on paper. It's our word against his. He can say it's fake, say I'm hysterical, say I set the fire myself. She leaned back and folded her arms. That's why we need more than paper. We need what he trusts most. What's that? His own arrogance, she said. A little smile touched her mouth. Men like Kwesi always think they're smarter than everyone else. They write things down. They keep records because they want leverage. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. You said he has a safe in his home office. Yes, behind a painting. Combination's his birthday. Simple, man, she snorted. We need what's in that safe. And any hiding places your son knows about. Kids see everything adults pretend not to. My heart lurched. You want me to go back there? The house just burned. Which means, she said calmly, the police will be there today. But tonight, they'll leave a skeleton crew. And your husband, he won't sleep there. He'll be wrapped in his performance, crying on TV, talking to neighbors, playing the shocked widower. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp. We go in after dark. Get in, get what we need, get out. 20 minutes. I thought about the smoke still clinging to my hair, the flames eating Malik's superhero curtains, the men with my key. I thought about my son sleeping on her couch, his small body curled like he was trying to take up less space in a world that had turned on him. If breaking into my own half-burned house was what it took to keep him safe, then that was what I would do. Okay, I whispered. We'll go. But what I didn't know yet was that returning to that ruin would put us face to face with the very men who tried to erase us. And in that blackened house with ash under our feet, I would learn just how far Kwesi was willing to go to keep his secrets buried.
Night had a different kind of darkness after that fire. Sweet auburn streetlights glowed behind us as we drove back toward Buckhead. I wore Malik's old hoodie and a pair of borrowed jeans from a box Auntie kept for clients starting over. Malik, stubborn as ever, sat beside me in similar dark clothes, his jaw set. "You're staying in the car," I told him. "No, Mama," he said, eyes bright with a grown-up kind of knowing. "Daddy hides things where you don't look. I do." Kids see things, baby. We think we're shielding them. They're just cataloging everything in silence. Auntie knew a way into the neighborhood that bypassed the main road cameras. "Perks of representing developers," she'd muttered. We parked 2 streets away and walked, our shoes crunching on bits of charred leaves blown from the burned house. When our home finally came into view, my breath caught. By day, it had looked tragic. At night, it looked haunted. Blackened windows stared back at us. Parts of the roof had caved in. Yellow tape fluttered lazily in the breeze, trying to make order out of ruin. The smell of wet ash and burnt plastic clung heavy in the air. 20 minutes, I repeated in my head. In, out. The back kitchen door had been damaged, but not completely destroyed. Auntie pressed her shoulder to it, grunting softly, and it gave way with a low creak. We slipped inside. The kitchen, my kitchen, was a skeleton. Cabinets scorched, my fridge a melted shape in the corner. The tile under our feet was gritty with soot. "Office," I whispered. I knew the way even in the dark. We picked our steps carefully through the ruined living room, up the stairs that groaned but held. Malik moved like a ghost, light on his feet. Kwesi's office door was swollen from the heat, but mostly intact. I shoved it open with my hip. The room smelled different, less burned, more like smoke and old cologne. The fire hadn't reached here fully. The painting that had hidden the safe was half hanging, frame charred, canvas curled. I pulled it down, punched in Kwesi's birthday with shaking fingers. The lock clicked. Inside, bundles of cash, passports, a folder with property documents, and 2 small black phones. Auntie's eyes flashed. "Take it all," she whispered. "Quick." As I stuffed the items into a backpack, Malik tugged my sleeve. "Mama!" "Not now, Bibi. We have to hurry." "Mama, look," he insisted, pointing to the corner of the room. There, one floorboard sat just slightly higher than the rest. I never would have noticed, but my boy had lived his life noticing things. We pried it up with the edge of a broken drawer. Underneath lay another phone, older, and a small black notebook bound with an elastic band. Auntie's mouth twitched. Bingo. That's when we heard it. The sound that turns your blood to ice. Voices, male, close. "Sight's clear, let's just double-check upstairs," one said. Boots thudded on charred wood downstairs. Someone said the safe was in the office. Might be something left. My heart lurched into my throat. We were in that office. We moved without thinking. Auntie nudged Malik toward the closet and practically shoved us both inside. She squeezed in right behind, pulling the door almost closed, leaving a slim crack. The room's darkness pressed against us. Malik's hand found mine, small and clammy. His breath ticked fast against my wrist. Footsteps approached. The office door swung open. A flashlight beam sliced across the room, landing directly on the open safe. "Well, damn, this wasn't open before," one of the men muttered. "You sure?" "Yeah, boss said leave it, just the fire. Someone's been here." The beam paused over the disturbed floorboard.
over a smear of soot where my shoe had slid, then down. "Look," he said slowly, "those prints. Too small for an adult." My stomach dropped. "A kid? You think they made it out?" Silence. Heavy. Thick. "We gotta call him," the first one said. "Now." "And tell him what? Sorry, boss, we torched the place, but your wife and kids slipped through?" "Better he hears it from us, man." The sound of a phone unlocking. Button presses. Auntie's lips brushed my ear. "Trust me," she breathed. And then she did something wild. From where we hid, she let out a blood-curdling scream, long, high, and desperate, the kind of sound that makes the hair stand up on your neck. The men cursed, startled. "What the? Someone's outside." Boots pounded back down the steps. "Move," Auntie hissed, already pushing the closet door open. We ran, down the hall, down the stairs that puffed ash with every step, through the broken kitchen door, heartbeats thundering louder than the sirens that now howled down the street. By the time the men came spilling out the front, guns drawn, we were already slipping into the tree line, breath burning, legs shaking. Only then did Auntie straighten, pushing her glasses up. "See?" she panted. "Told you. 20 minutes." I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. We had almost been caught, almost been erased the second time. But in my backpack was what she'd called gold. The notebook, the phones, the proof. I didn't know what those little black rectangles were hiding yet, but I could feel it in my bones. Once we opened them, there would be no going back.
Back in that cramped office that had started to feel like a shelter, we emptied the backpack onto Auntie's desk. The cash she brushed aside. "That's for later," she said. "Starting over isn't cheap." Her fingers went straight for the little black notebook. She slipped the elastic off, opened it, and began to read. Her eyes moved fast, her expression tightening. "Oh, this man is arrogant," she murmured. "Keeps receipts on everything." She turned the notebook so I could see. Lines and lines of dates, amounts, names. Borrowed $15K from R at 10% weekly. Lost $12K at club on Ponce. Need to cover gap by Friday. And then, toward the back, the ink changed color, as if he'd written the next lines on a different day, with a different heart. Final solution. A's insurance, 2.5M. Fire. Has to look like accident. Talked to M&D. Price, $50K, half before, half after. Must do it while I'm in Chicago. Make sure the kid doesn't get out. That last line, I couldn't breathe. He had written about my baby, like he was a liability, not his own flesh and blood. I pressed my hand over my mouth. Tears slipped out hot and quiet. I gave this man my 20s, my 30s, my whole heart, and he wrote our deaths down like a business expense. Auntie reached out, squeezed my wrist. She said softly, "Let yourself feel it, then we use it." Her tech friend came by with a backpack full of wires and gadgets. He plugged the burner phones into his laptop, tapped quickly. Within an hour, we were staring at message threads that made my stomach flip. Quessie's number at the top, Marcus beneath it. Quessie. Need it done this week. Wife is too suspicious lately. Boy listens too much. Marcus. Fire still the plan? Quessie. Yes, subtle, no mess. I'll be on a flight. Ironclad alibi. My hands trembled as I scrolled, message after message. Times, addresses, payment confirmations, voice notes where I could hear Quessie's voice, calm and measured, discussing how best to kill us without leaving marks. "I'm going to be sick," I whispered. Auntie looked at me, eyes steady. "You're allowed, but after you're done, you're going to stand up. Because this, Ayla," she tapped the screen,
This is what monsters look like in real life, not in horror movies. They sign checks, they go to PTA meetings, they kiss their kids goodnight, and then they plan their funerals in group chats. She picked up her phone and dialed. "High water," she said when the man answered. "It's Z. I've got a case for you. Attempted double homicide, dressed up as a house fire. Husband's the mastermind, wife and child survived. We have recordings, notes, burner phones, and a very angry mama bear." She listened, then nodded. "Tomorrow morning? Good. She'll meet you." She hung up and turned to me. "Detective Ezra Highwater, homicide. Doesn't owe anyone. Doesn't scare easy. He'll verify everything. Then we make a plan." "Plan for what?" I asked, even though a sliver of understanding was already forming. "For the moment your husband realizes you're alive, and for how we're going to make sure he hangs himself with his own words." That night, I barely slept. Malik tossed in the little back room, whimpering in his dreams. Twice I went in, sat on the edge of the cot, and smoothed his curls, humming the old hymns my grandma used to sing. When dawn came, sky pale and tired, the news lit up with footage of our burned home. Front and center was Kwesi, looking broken, looking lost, looking straight into the cameras and saying, "If anyone has seen my wife and son, please, please help me. I don't know if they made it out." He wiped at dry eyes, he clutched at his chest, neighbors patted his back. Malik watched from the couch, his face hard. "He's lying," he said. "He's acting for the camera." "He is," I agreed quietly. "But that's okay." "Why?" "Because sometimes, baby," I said, "God lets people put on masks just long enough for everyone to watch them slip." Later that morning, sitting across from Detective Highwater in a small conference room at the precinct, I laid it out again, this time with evidence. He didn't doubt, didn't suggest I was confused or emotional. He listened. He studied the notebook, the messages, the timeline. "This is enough to move," he said finally. "But I want him recorded, cornered, no wiggle room." "How?" I asked. "You're going to text your husband. Tell him you're alive, tell him you took his toys, and tell him if he wants them back," he slid a small wire across the table, "he can come talk to you himself." My hands shook as I picked up my phone. "Illa, I know what you did. I'm alive. Malik is alive. I have everything you hid. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., Centennial Park, by the fountains. Come alone." His reply came back in seconds. "Kwesi, Ayla, baby, you don't understand. We need to talk. I'll be there." I stared at the screen, my reflection faint in the glass. Tomorrow, I would sit on a bench under open sky, wearing a tiny microphone like a necklace, and look into the eyes of the man who tried to burn me out of his life. The next morning, the sky over Centennial Park was a soft, pale blue. Children chased pigeons, a couple held hands by the fountain, runners passed by with headphones in. It looked like an ordinary day, but inside, I felt like I was walking into a courtroom where my heart was on trial. Detective Highwater's team blended into the scenery. One man pretended to read a newspaper on a bench. A woman with a stroller actually had recording equipment nestled under the baby blanket. There was even someone selling hot dogs who wasn't really selling hot dogs. I sat alone on a metal bench, the wire tucked under my cardigan, my hands wrapped around a paper cup of tea Auntie had insisted I take. The steam warmed my fingers. My stomach was a knot. "You don't have to be brave," she told me earlier. "You just have to be honest. Let him show who he is." At exactly 10 o'clock, I saw him. Kwesi walked toward me in yesterday's wrinkled shirt, tie loosened, eyes ringed with dark circles. For a moment, my heart did that old traitorous flip. This was the man I'd fallen asleep next to for 8 years, the man whose back I rubbed when he was stressed.
the man whose face I'd studied for wrinkles and found none. He sat down beside me, just a bit too close. I caught the faint scent of his cologne mixed with stale sweat. "Isla," he said, voice breaking on my name like we were in a dramatic movie. "Thank God! I thought you and Malik were dead," I finished for him, my voice calm in a way that surprised me. "Burned in our beds?" He looked around nervously. "Not here," he hissed. "Don't talk like that here. You don't understand." "Oh, I understand," I said quietly. "I understand you paid 2 men to make it look like we died in an accident, that you gave them a key, that you increased my life insurance to $2.5 million and planned to use it to pay off your gambling debts." His jaw clenched. "You've been talking to the wrong people." "No," I said, looking straight ahead at the fountain. "I've been reading the right things. Your notebook, your messages, listening to your voice notes. You planned it, Kwesi. You wrote it down like a grocery list." For a second, the mask slipped. His eyes went cold, flat. Then he sighed and leaned back. "You never did know when to leave well enough alone," he muttered. My fingers tightened around the teacup. "Tell me something," I said, forcing my voice to stay even. "When did you decide we were worth more dead than alive?" He laughed, sharp and humorless. "Don't be dramatic, Isla." "I am many things," I said softly. "But today, I am not dramatic. I am clear." He looked at me, really looked, like he was seeing someone he didn't recognize. "You think you can go to the police with this?" he scoffed. "You think they'll believe you over me? I'm the grieving husband. The whole city watched me cry on TV." "Cry without tears," I replied. He stiffened. "And those men," I continued, "they saw the safe open. They know someone was in that house. They know now that someone survived. You think they're gonna go down without dragging you with them?" His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "You don't understand who I owe, Isla. If this goes bad, they come for me. And if they can't find me, they'll settle for you." "So your solution was to beat them to it?" He didn't answer. "Did you ever love us?" I pressed, the words trembling now. He stared at the water spraying up from the fountain. His profile was hard, tired. "I loved what you came with," he said at last. "Stability, money, a name people respected, a son who made me look like a good father. You were useful."
Trials don't happen overnight. Justice, at least the earthly kind, takes its time. Kwesi's lawyers tried everything. They said he was under pressure. They said the messages were taken out of context. They suggested I might have exaggerated, that maybe the notebook was fabricated. But phones don't lie, baby. Bank statements don't lie. Those men he hired didn't lie either. Not when they realized they could get a lighter sentence by telling the truth. I didn't go to every hearing. The courtroom air is heavy, and I had a child to raise and a life to glue back together. But the days I did go, I sat with my back straight and my hands folded in my lap, feeling the weight of all the women who never got this far sit beside me. When the verdict finally came, the words felt surreal. Guilty on all counts. 25 years. No guarantee he'd ever walk out free again. Folks asked me if I was happy.